I'm Mel Stewart, and this is the SwimSwam Podcast. Joining me today is the chief executive of one of the most successful national governing bodies on the planet. Do your research. You'll be hard-pressed to find a more successful national governing body based on population and output of talent. Today we have CEO of British Swimming, Jack Buckner.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying nice to be here. You know, I had to, the last time I did one of these with the CEO, it was with Tim Hinchy at USA Swimming, and he just sat there. And I had to tell him, you got to cheer, you got to say thanks, you got to say something.
Yeah.
he picks it up. For our listeners out there, I want to talk about something that might surprise you, and I can use Jack as an example. When SwimSwam launched, most people assumed that we were a domestic US-based audience, and we were for about 2 years. But this is what's happening in the sport of swimming. We have seen those numbers entirely tip. We're about 50-50 now, 50 US, 50 international, and a large portion of that comes from British swimming. So we're highly motivated to talk to you, Jack, and dig in because your people are listening.
Good. Well, that's fantastic, and congratulations on everything you've done. I mean, that's a real success story, and it's nice. I mean, one of the things I love about sport and I'm passionate about is the kind of international flavor of sport. And well, I love the Olympics, and I love all sport. I love the whole kind of international feel to it. It's a wonderful thing.
Our listeners in Britain probably know this, but they don't in the United States. But just so people have some context on you, we're Olympic peers, and in the 1980s, you're a 5K European Championship gold medalist, and you're also a bronze medalist at World Championships in 1987, European Championships was 1986. You also, before you came in and to helm British Swimming, you were the CEO of British Triathlon. So you're coming in seasoned. And for as much as I was singing your praises on the lead in, I can't give it all to you. David Sparks helmed British Swimming for 23 years. And I feel like we're sort of living in a moment where this is, I don't know if it's the honeymoon period, but this is the darling star time for British Swimming. This is a big moment. Does it feel like that inside with your team and your culture?
I think it's a really interesting time because, first of all, I love sport and I love Olympic sport, but it feels like, I don't want to get carried away, but we're off the back of the trials, and it feels like things are going well, and I'm a massive advocate of performance sport and coaching and culture, and it feels like it's going in a good direction, but you never quite know, do you? And we'll all watch your trials and what happens. And the thing about Olympic sport is standards rise across the board. And maybe that's the thing that's surprising at the moment, is that we put in some good performances, but so are others. And despite what's happened in the last year, 18 months, performance sport standards are rising. And I find that really amazing, really, given everything we've been through, that these wonderful young people are continuing to push things forward, and that's great. So it is an exciting time, but none of us are getting carried away at all. So I mean, there are so many hurdles between here and Tokyo. It's going to be a massive challenge, and I think for all of us, just getting a team to Tokyo with everything we've been through is an achievement in itself.
I want to get into that. I want to get into the trials and the hurdles that you've had to manage as CEO. But before we do that, we need to throw some red meat to the swimming nerds and give them some inside information. So we covered British swimming trials the way we cover all trials around the world, and it's and I can tell you that our traffic is at the top level. Everyone tunes in, everyone's watching British swimming. And as soon, there were a lot of key moments, but we'll surmise it saying that the men's 200 freestyle, when that happened, my phone started blowing up. And I'm talking to Olympic peers, I'm talking to coaches, I'm talking to people at USA Swimming. And the thought is, the British Swimming is the favorite to win the 4x200 freestyle relay. That was an extraordinary, just one example of swimming coming out of a country of a population of 68 million.
Well, yeah, we want to downplay that a bit, okay? So we don't want to get too carried away. So yeah, it was a brilliant way to finish the meet. It was a fantastic way to finish the meet, and we were all on the edge of our seat, and it was amazing, really, because it was an empty arena, and yet there still felt like there was a real proper atmosphere, even though there were no spectators. So it had a lovely, it felt amazing. But we'd rather just, we're Brits. We're not like you, man. We want to just downplay it a bit and just take a time. And there's a long way to go. And we'd rather be underdogs. I mean, we're always underdogs to the Americans and Australians. So we much prefer it that way.
We're going to have the relay on coming up pretty soon and talk to each member of the relay. And so we'll dive a little deeper into the 4x2 and all of the other events on the run up to Tokyo. I understand the experience because I'm based in the U.S. I understand what's been going on with USA Swimming. And, this has been we have to pay due respect to what we've gone through. This is the biggest moment since the pandemic of back in 1919, 1920, 1918. But everything shut down here. And it was extraordinarily difficult. It seems as though under the Trump administration, U.S. citizens were out and about, maskless, and let's just say restrictions weren't quite as harsh. It seems like they were a lot tougher in the U.K. Is it? Could you give us an inside look as to what you were dealing with last year, trying to keep your athletes in the pool and keep them training safely?
Yeah, I mean, it was. It just, I think for all of us, it was this kind of massive escalating crisis. And then when we went into lockdown, and the first time we went into lockdown, nobody knew any of the rules. We were in lockdown. And so pretty much everything stopped. And it just, it was just uncanny. The streets were quiet, no one there. And everyone was in lockdown. It was almost like, is everyone safe and all of that. So we went into a hard lockdown, and fairly quickly, performance sports people are brilliant. They're adaptable, and we adapted to it. And then we pushed hard through the government to get some kind of way of getting our swimmers back in, and we managed to get an elite athlete exemption. So we managed to get kind of a group of Olympians, and then we had these massive protocols, like a 50-page protocol, and essentially we got initially our two performance centres, Loughborough and Bath, and then Loughborough and Bath and the Scottish one, Stirling, up and running. So we got them back in the water, but it was the protocols and the process and the sign-offs with public health and who's in and who isn't. It was incredibly stressful. I started in about the February. I said, look, this is a crisis now. So I started every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, a COVID call. And I just said, we'll get everyone on it who needs to be on it. And we're sat here now, 21st of April, and we still got our Tuesday morning COVID call. And I can't wait to see everyone who's been on that call, because the way the agenda's changed, and now obviously people are back in the water, so there's different pressures, but now we're worried about flights and travel and getting to Tokyo. So it's been hugely challenging, and I guess it's a massive tribute to the organisation. We've managed to adapt and move forward and be fleet of foot, and I think make some pretty good decisions when I look back on it. It's not perfect, but I'm pretty comfortable with the decisions we've made and the pressure, and then all the costs and things. And it was like this massive drinks round where everybody owes everybody money, and you kind of, how do you work our way through that, and keeping the business going, and furlough schemes. Gosh, it's been extraordinary, really.
I feel from a financial standpoint, SwimSwam is sort of like the canary in the coal mine. I feel like we feel the market of the aquatic sports, and we feel it sooner than NGBs do, and then NGBs will feel it about 3 to 6 months later. Yeah. I found that our experience, we were talking closely with USA Swimming, but we had few adjustments and write downs on agreements last year. But we kept adjusting agreements and partnerships, which in our ecosystem that underwrites the sport of swimming, and we're feeling it into this year, and it's starting to. I feel like the market is just now opening up, and I feel like contracts are coming back. I can see them coming back in full by the spring of 22. Something that's different is I know that you have your public funding, and in the United States, where it's registration and it's sponsorships. Tim Hinchy at USA Swimming had to actually he opened up the foundation, and he started supporting clubs with money and support. What's the experience been like on your side, and is that or with public funding, is it not a problem?
No, it's been a problem because the public funding has got squeezed. I mean, but again, having that public funding has been really helpful. So, in our case, it's UK Sport, and we've managed that, but we've got less, and we've got pressures, as you say, commercial pressures, and we're linked closely in around membership with the home nation. So we've really felt it, and we felt furlough scheme. But it's good you say that, because I mean, I don't know. We don't know what the future holds, but I definitely feel that when you look at it, health and well-being and communities at the heart of it, and that's. I'm not just a sport person. I just genuinely believe that, and people really value the health. They really value the well-being, and all the people I talk to say, do you know what? It's going to come back. The whole health and well-being thing, and I would say, literally since the vaccine. Almost in the last month or so, as certainly over here, the vaccination and, things are opening up again, and it just feels we're moving forward. Now, obviously that may change, but I still think people are optimistic about the future and about the health and well-being and the importance of health and well-being in their lives. So I'm hoping as part of that journey, the Olympics is another positive moment, on that journey, towards young people and health and well-being and all of that.
In the United States, swimming is a dominant sport. It's one of the top 3 tier sports. In Britain, where does swimming fit in? Is swimming where does it fit into the sport ecosystem in terms of support? And because it ultimately ends up with commercial dollars and support. Where are you at?
Well, I mean, I'm very open here. I mean, over here, it's the great god of football, or the great god of soccer. So I mean, it's been, and I've seen it all my life, really. Football, soccer just dominates the landscape. And I worked at Adidas for a long time, and we had all these marketing plans. And then the guy from football or soccer would come in, and we'd all go, "Oh, sorry, we'll just tear up our plans." And it really feels like 90% of the coverage is football or soccer, maybe maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe 80%, and then 5% is cricket, 5% is rugby, and then Olympic sports is really squeezed. And I think, and it's not just speaking about the swimming, I think the Olympic movement, we haven't done a good enough job in the last 20 years. I really feel we haven't done a good enough job, and we need to roll up our sleeves and become better, because the product we've got is sensational, and every time it comes on, people love it, but we don't do a good enough job. So we are well down the pecking order, and it's a personal frustration of mine. But I also think you can't just whinge about it. We've got to do something about it. And I really believe Olympic sport and Paralympic sport needs to work better together. We need to aggregate more things. We need to develop a better product. We need to pull together events and things and marketing strategies. And so I think we really need to do that. And that's something I think, it happens once every 4 years, doesn't it? And then we disappear off the radar again. And it's a bit of a frustration.
For a very, very long time in the United States, and also I think there was an effect globally, we had Michael Phelps. But it seems, looking, staring over the pond, that Adam Peaty is your Michael Phelps. I can tell you that if we report on Adam Peaty, the traffic needle goes into the red. It goes all the way over. This is an exciting athlete. What does that mean for a governing body, and in terms of impacting registration and new swimmers British swimmers, kids wanting to participate?
I think it really helps, and I think you're right. I mean, again, without noise, but it's we did, well, you'll know better than me probably. Adam did 2 of the top 10 fastest times in history in our trials last week. So he now has the 20 fastest times in history, and I think Usain Bolt had 7 or something. So I mean, that's just but it's interesting because we were really excited because James Wilby's doing pretty well now, Molly Renshaw. So it feels like and I go down to the pool in Loughborough and watch him train, and it feels like if you can have someone like that, it does. First of all, at the elite level, it shows, if you're swimming in the next lane or you're training nearby, it just raises the bar, So I feel if you can harness his talent, it should help push the team up in the relays and things like that. So there's that effect, and then there's also the effect of wanting to be like him. So I agree. He's a global star. He's an incredible young man, and just hope he can keep going. And obviously he's a dad now, but he seems as resolute as ever, which is amazing.
In terms of activation of sponsorships, which is really nuts and bolts. This is the world we live in. I'm not in the same boat as you, but I probably live parallel lives in terms of what is top of mind for me. I'm trying to service our sponsors. I'm trying to service vendors and everyone who supports the sport and keep them happy and keep this humming along. That has been extraordinarily hard. How are you handling these partnerships and activation while everyone's remote and few people are in the office?
So we a lot of the contracts we had were linked into rights that we were unable to deliver because we didn't have events and things like that. But what we tried we tried to work on and we've had limited resources and people on furlough. So we tried to activate digitally, and we've done okay at that. We've managed to activate digitally more, and we've done a lot more on social media and Instagram and Twitter, and we actually did stuff. We shot stuff at home and things like that. So we've done what we can, and I mean this whole thing of engagement and storytelling, which is so we worked hard at that, and we've actually managed to protect income just about. So we've done okay, I would say, but it is difficult because and again you look ahead to the future and obviously next year there's so many events next year. It's going to be hard to stand out from the crowd again. So I would say we've done okay, but let's not hide from the fact it's a huge struggle. And when you're not having events and you can't have teams and competition, it really is difficult. And so it has been a struggle. And the other thing we found a struggle is the whole broadcast platform and getting the sport on TV, and that's been challenging too because the media landscape has changed so much, and we've been live streaming and things like that, but it's so hard to build an audience now, and the broadcasters are under pressure, and that's a whole other area which has been really, really challenging for us.
That's a problem globally, and I think if you're measuring your audience by eyeballs watching a live event, you're missing the boat. Everyone's consuming in 30, 60, they're consuming in small bites. But I can tell you, I've noticed a lift, and I've noticed a lot more content coming out of the UK, and great content and great narrative. And of course, we interface with your communication folks, and they've done a great job. So there is, we're sort of like the Switzerland of swimming because it all flows into SwimSwam. And so I know Jack, I know who's working, I know who's got their nose to the grindstone, and I know who doesn't, and you guys do. So I talked to somebody, Mark Spitz. We're men of a certain age. So we're going to leave it at that. But Mark Spitz, I talked to Mark Spitz because, and I talked to IOC contacts, and I talked to the top line people, and also talked to our mutual friend Tim Hinchy, and I think that everybody listening out there is they're saying, ask him about the Olympics. Jack, do you think we're going to have an Olympics? Because I've asked everybody else, and I'd like to hear your response, and then I can tell you what I'm hearing.
So I think every time we ask that question, we're told, so the BOA Team GB, they said there is not going to be a time this year. There's not going to be a time this year when we don't have an Olympics. And the message we get every single time is there will definitely be an Olympics, but it's going to be a very different Olympics. And it's going to. So our message is the Olympics will definitely be happening, but it's going to be a very different Olympics. And it's not, certainly I spent about a week in a bubble, and that's, when we did it last week, and it's really different experience, and I find it incredibly hard, and I think it's just going to be really different,
That's the message I've heard from everyone. So the lead in with Mark Spitz and contacts at the IOC and contacts at our friends at FINA, and everyone has said the same thing. It's the same message. And, I heard it the earliest from our buddy, Tim. It's, are you going, and how big of a team is your team? Do you know what the team was like in 16, and are you pared down in terms of staff and support staff? What's going to happen on the British swimming side? I mean,
so I'm personally not going to go. So we're going to put as much as we can in the team, so, I mean, being blunt, if there's another we're going to be tight on numbers. We're going to be tight on space. So I just I feel you want to get as many swimmers as you can, and then as many support staff and coaches. And you want people in that environment who are can-do people, who are problem solvers, who can just deal with whatever's thrown at them. So you need a certain approach in that environment. And I just think also, I mean, so I'm not going to go because I don't think I, actually being blunt, add a lot of value. And the second thing is, I'd feel if I went and something happened to me, I would feel a complete idiot, because I just think I didn't, I'm better off trying to, watch and be available to support, really. So which is a pity. I'm going to really, really miss it because it's the first one I missed in a long time. But anyway, the experience would be different. You'll be spending an awful lot of time in your hotel room, and not, it's not going to be the same thing.
That is a refreshing answer. I don't know that I would get the same answer from CEOs at other NGBs. Something tells me you're an outlier. Okay. I can tell you based on my experience that at the actual show, the big event on the big stage, the CEO might be the person. You definitely cufflinks, definitely not necessary. But also within that culture of the Olympics, while it's happening, it is so chaotic. There's so much walking around. There's so much. I've gone to Olympics and I've been at home for Olympics, and I've found that I've been far more effective at home communicating digitally in terms of moving toward mission goals. So bravo. I'm glad to hear that. In terms of your experience, this is it's a standard question, but in terms of hurdles that you've had to deal with in terms of running events, just nuts and bolts. You just had your trials. There were no fans. So, but what was the experience like? Did you come out? Did you have any? Did anyone come out infected with COVID? Do you have a success rate? What did you like? What did you not like?
So it actually went. I mean, we've done really well. We haven't had anything. I mean, we did the whole thing. We created a bubble. Testing as you go in. You have to stay in the bubble, and basically you go from the hotel to the pool with no. You take meals to your room. So there's no communal experience. Masks in the arena. Ins and outs, and kind of protocols, all that kind of stuff, and no-go areas. Things like limited numbers in lanes for warm-up. So really, really strict. So there are a lot of very strict protocols, which they kept to. So it was good. I mean, I think that the sense was the fact we got it going. There was actually a really good atmosphere. Everyone was there for a purpose, and they were committed, and everyone was really sensible. It was a very rigid environment, but actually people kept to it, which was good. And the other thing which was really interesting is obviously the competition was brilliant. There was some great swims. What we did was we had this debate, in an empty arena, do we do post-race interviews? And I'm so glad we did, because it means, people, everyone on the planet's had an experience, and these swimmers have had experiences, and the sense of like emotional drama and the care that, so the post-race interviews were brilliant. I mean, I was in tears in most of them because, the thanks and the sincerity of it, and the gratefulness for the opportunity. And you think, wow, it's, there's been so much negativity out there. Seeing these swimmers get up, do a great swim, speak about their families and friends, and that it was lovely. I was pretty emotional actually over the whole thing. So that was really, really nice.
In terms of in terms of coming out of this year, what are you hoping that? What do you think? What have you learned so far? What are you hoping to gain? Because I think that every time we have a moment of struggle, I do think we get better. Yeah. What have you learned? What have you gained? What's shifted your point of view?
I think there's been a lot. We can be far more adaptable. We probably in some ways overplan and are a bit rigid, so we can be far more adaptable. In our lives, far more flexible. This medium can work. We can do things faster. So probably and maybe simpler as well. When I look at some of the events we've done, we've done and delivered events in sort of a quarter of the time, so we can actually be quicker, and we probably make things more complex than we need to. And also, I think you suddenly realize actually there's loads of stuff we can do really fast, like this interview or things like that, and get on a Zoom, make a decision, move on. So I can't find that quite liberating, and I hope we don't go back to a world where we over plan with too much process. And I think we're way more connected. So, things like that have happened. And it's been really interesting with the swimmers because they've had to adapt a lot more too, haven't they? And all the sports people have, yet they seem still to be producing performances. So maybe it's challenging some prevailing orthodoxies in coaching. And I'm not an expert at that, but you just think that's quite interesting too, isn't it? That there's maybe different ways of doing things and different ways of doing elite sport and jobs and that. So I find that all quite exciting.
So the big question is, I've covered most of my topics, but will you come back on the SwimSwam pod and keep us posted? Because you're good for SwimSwam.
No, that's very kind of you. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, cool. Of course. I mean, we're going to kind of go back in now, and obviously the focus is on Tokyo, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, there's still a long way to go. And I mean, just, all our divers are just on the plane to Tokyo, and then they're coming back to the Europeans in Budapest, and, all that stuff of flights and risks. So there's still lots of risks out there for all of us. So it's still going to be a bumpy ride, I think.
You are a athletics star, a track and field star, if you're listening in the United States. What do you do for fitness? That's out of curiosity. Are you in the pool? Are you on the track?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit of, I don't know about yourself, but I'm a bit of a knackered old runner. I often joke if I was a racehorse, they'd probably shoot me. So whenever I try and run, I break down. So I do swim, and the bike's far more forgiving. So I tend to do a fair bit on the bike because I like my exercise outdoors. But it, if I can run, but I like to compete. So I'm one of these sorry people who I just like to know whether I've won or lost. So I'll play squash, or I'll play cricket, or I'll do anything. So I need to kind of channel that primeval desire for competition into something that keeps me sane. So yeah, I'll do. I mean, if I had more time, I would do sport all day long.
There is one more topic that I meant to cover, and it's a great way to close, and it's something that is foundational that in most countries, and I think Australian swimming Australia has they're the best at it, learning in the United States, but there's a connection between, of course, learn to swim, water safety, and feeding that into our registration base. What is it like in the UK, and how effective are you at the governing body level in impacting learn to swim positively?
I think we're really good. It's slightly different because our organisational structure is we do that through England, Scotland and Wales, so through the home nation. So we're actually a little bit more, we have separate, but actually they do a really good job. So, the learn to swim programs in England, Scotland and Wales are really good. they're really connected into the community. And I absolutely agree with you. You know, it's the sport that's a life skill, and I guess that's one of the sort of things from a comms perspective that we've all been talking about. You know, youngsters not being able to swim and the danger of that. So, and the other aspect of it, which I really like, which again is it genuinely is cradle to grave. My mum's in New Zealand and she's in her late 80s and she swims twice a week, you know, so that's what I do love about it. I love that thing of cradle to grave, which I think is more encompassing in swimming than any sport.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam Podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam Podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.